Welcome back, everybody, to another installment of our look at, what is the name of the show? Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. We really know what we're talking about here at the Jurassic Park Podcast when it comes to the Godzilla universe. So make sure you're watching us for all the in-depth analysis of this universe. But we are talking about episode 7 of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. And I am here with none other than Agent T. No, it's not Agent T. It's Tom Jurassic this week. What's up, Tom?
Yeah. Hello.
How you doing? I feel like I got a good feeling that you really like this episode. I feel like that's probably the case, right?
I screamed at my TV on more than one occasion watching this one. And I will say, coming into this one, my friend had given me a heads up that it was focused more on May's story. So he had said it was a little bit slower. But for me, I actually really enjoyed this episode because of what we unravel as we're learning more about May's story.
Yeah, I liked it, but I think it maybe is my least favorite so far of the bunch.
Yeah.
But that being said, there was so many really cool things like revealed in this episode and like threads and connections between things, and I'm like, my mind was getting blown, but at the same time I was like, I felt maybe a little disconnected from the storytelling, like the way it was told. I don't
Yeah.
know if I don't know, there's something about how it all connected that I was like, I don't know where we're going with this. So yeah, but anything else before we get into it you want to mention before we dive into the kind of scene by scene?
Yes, actually, yes, because it's relevant. This is the first thing I've recorded since watching Godzilla 1998 for the first time.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
You had asked I don't know, a few weeks ago, you're like, hey, is this Godzilla 1998 worth a buy? And like you got kind of roasted in a chat.
I got eviscerated.
Yeah, everybody was like, dude, what did you, like I said, like, what did you just say to me? Are you kidding me? Like, you got to be buying this movie. Like, if it's a good deal, just pick it up, man. And while it's not like a very traditional great Godzilla movie, it is something, like, I think something really special. Now, maybe from your perspective, being somebody that never saw it before, maybe it's not hitting you the same way. But back in 1998, like, dude, that movie hit us like so good,
Yeah.
and it was just so of its time, very clearly when you're watching it. But I think it's so much fun. I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack is one of my most favorite things of all time, and I just have a good time with that movie. That is a movie I remember going to see for the first time. So that doesn't always happen for me. I don't remember seeing Jurassic Park or The Lost World. I remember seeing Godzilla 1998. So
And this
what did
is
you
why
think?
we're becoming a Godzilla podcast. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought some of it was like really stupid in terms of how it played out, but it's kind of got that sort of popcorn flick-esque quality of like late 90s sci-fi film. And I thought it was really cool how they managed to find a reason for Godzilla to stay on the island of Manhattan, and how that kind of all plays out was really, really cool. I mean, it shows that in a franchise, it's possible to take big creatures into a heavily populated environment and have a compelling reason for them to stay there, right?
We don't need to get into that too far. But dude, I love that moment. Like, I know it's so wild and crazy, but like in and there was a moment that reminded me of that in like the first episode. I feel like when there was all those eggs planted around and stuff.
Yes.
It reminds me of the Madison Square Garden scene in Godzilla 98, and I was like, I just love that sequence because at that time, like, as a Jurassic fan, I was all about the raptors and just like how cool they were, and then now we're getting our very own kind of raptor-esque kind of version of Godzilla,
Yeah.
these miniatures. It was like really such a fun sequence. I love that.
Oh, well,
one so
that's
much.
actually a really cool Jurassic Park reference as well, isn't it? In a sense, the self-breeding that leads to Godzilla having all of those eggs is obviously akin to what happens with the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Nick Tatopoulos, and right, is that that was his name? It was just a fun movie, and yeah, Matthew Broderick is so fun to watch in that movie. So like silly and aloof, and and there's just a lot of really fun characters, I think, in that movie. So it's definitely like of its time and very different than any other Godzilla movie, but and the design is certainly unique, but like still very cool. I think I love that design. It's fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it.
Good. I'm glad. I was a little worried. We were all hyping it up so much, but like I think you did have to be there maybe to really, really love it, like we do. But like it's it's unique. So I'm glad you had a good time with it. All right. So episode 7. This one kicks off, and we get to see emerging from the sand Godzilla. No, wait, that was Tim, wasn't it? It was Tim this time. Tim is alive and emerging from the sand. I just love that sequence. I thought it was too fun. Like as soon as we see the helicopter crash, I'm like, oh yeah, we know he's alive. I mean, I had a good feeling he was alive, but like we get to see him emerging from the sand just like Godzilla did in the previous episode, and I thought that was a pretty fun little reveal there.
Yeah, I love how his reaction is kind of like ours, where he's like, "What the f?" Because I feel like we're sat there like the rest of the crew's dead, all of these trained soldiers are dead, but Tim survived.
But I'm here? Why?
Yeah.
I feel like he just keeps getting thrown into situations that he really doesn't want to be a part of. And and it's funny. It's funny. So we get to cut back to an Algerian airport. I'm assuming within walking distance. Nice, not too far away. But Kate and Kentaro are there. They're questioning like what was their dad doing? Like, why did he just run away? We questioned that last week as well. Like, Kate's kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt, saying like, yeah, maybe he had a reason. He was trying. Maybe he was trying to like
he was
something.
going to his third family.
Yeah. Imagine that's the big reveal at the end of the series.
Yeah.
Kentaro's really, really angry at him. Like, why? He saw us. Like, there was confirmation. Like, I was maybe wondering if he actually like recognized them or anything. But Kentaro's like, yeah, he saw us and he still left. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. So, at that same time, May is in the bathroom and she gives this quote of like, I've never been kidnapped before. So how does this work?
Yeah.
And we cut to the intro there.
I liked how the way that they present the people who are kidnapping her is very similar to Monarch in terms of the fact that it almost has this shady kind of government vibe about it, where you just see from the neck down these two men in suits walk into the bathroom and you're like, okay, this is quite serious.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like when I was watching this episode, I was very confused at this moment because she's obviously they're staging a kidnapping, right? And you could tell she was still like nervous looking, but she didn't look like, oh my God, I'm getting kidnapped, like you would. So I was very confused because in the previous episode, she like reveals like, oh, that she was, basically using them as leverage this whole time. And that she's been talking with people and stuff. So at that moment, I was like, well, why are they staging this? And so I'm thinking in my mind, oh, it's Monarch or whatever. I didn't really know what was happening. So, but yeah, I just found it like confusing. So, obviously it reveals as the episode goes on. But for me, I was like, okay, all right, well, at least she's safe flying on this plane. There's nothing really bad going on. So. But yeah, it does bring us to Seattle 3 years earlier, and May is there, or May is there. We'll say talking. She's talking about coding and just like I'm so good at coding, blah blah blah. And there's like a friend there or a potential business partner or somebody like that. We don't really know at that moment. They're having like a nice little dinner, and this person's like, hey. I know you got a lot of offers and stuff, but like, I think you really should join us. Do you have any takeaways from this moment in time? Because like, for me, I'm just like, okay, what is happening here? Like, what is the setup? Like, where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's kind of your quite typical manipulation of a younger person going into a career, isn't it? Where you have somebody who's sort of promising the world essentially to try and appeal to this person, and that for May means that ultimately she goes for it.
Yeah, I was getting those vibes as well. Like I wasn't being tricked. I felt like, whoever this person is obviously part of the problem of what she's afraid of. So she was given a very nice, like, introduction, and she gives that like moment where she's like, girl, look, I'm tired. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need, if you want to join us, sure, that would be great. But I know you got other places maybe to check out or whatever.
Using the old Uno reverse card and hitting them with the relatability.
Yeah, I wasn't falling for it. I wasn't buying it. It was like, it was believable, but I just wasn't buying it. Like, I could see how May was buying it though. But yeah, so I like it. We're going all over the place. We're 3 years earlier now. So, but then we're gonna go back to the current timeline, and a very sandy Tim walks into the airport.
Man, I felt for Tim in this moment so much.
I was just laughing very hard because, like, throughout this scene, he's just downing waters, and it's spilling all over him, and it's like he just had a time, he just walked out of the desert. It was pretty funny. At this time, Kate is yelling at him. He's like, he's been through it, and she's like, what did you do with May? Where is May? And he's like, well, he's talking about, actually first he's talking about their grandparents and like their plan for Monarch and how it was very important for the world and all that stuff, and saying he really admired like them and their dad as well, and that maybe he was trying to figure out a way to like to stop the next G-Day, which I feel like we probably assumed that, but like we don't know what the heck that guy's up to. But Kentaro, like I said, he wants to be done looking for the dad. He's like, I'm kind of done with it. But at that same time, Tim goes back on the phone with Verdugo and is like, hey, guess what happened? Godzilla woke up and it just walked away and it just disappeared. Like, I loved his little speech there about, he appeared out of nowhere and then he just disappeared. Like, it was really funny. But she wants Tim to get back here or else he's fired, basically, or suspended. So I thought that was a great little scene there.
I thought, so there were a couple of takeaways I had around this, which was, again, Tim talking about the grandparents' legacy, but not talking about Shaw, which is quite interesting because that kind of further reinforces that split between Bill and Keiko and obviously Lee and whatever has happened after the events that we saw unfold in the last episode.
Well, but he definitely has admired him, I feel like, right? Like, didn't he say so? So it's not like he's distancing his thoughts, I guess, but maybe the thoughts about Monarch and those people, so I guess maybe that's where he's going.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was interesting that Verdugo, her tone shifted when he mentioned Godzilla, so you could see that, again, that emotional impact, which gets hinted at, I think, a little bit later on as well in terms of what she might have experienced. And also, I like the fact that she sort of says she doesn't have any resources to allocate, and at one point threatens to suspend him, because it's, again, that whole idea of actually this organization knows that this crisis is unfolding, but the bureaucracy of this organization is stopping them from responding to it. And Verdugo's kind of the vessel for that, where you see that she's so entangled in all of the sort of hierarchical processes of Monarch that you then get that juxtaposed in the next scene where we go to obviously Outpost 88 and see what the flip side of that looks like.
Yeah, and it does bring us to that outpost in Alaska, and Barnes is at this outpost reading those signals again. There's all these signals, and but basically saying the same things that we've heard before. Look, it's like the same as G-Day. It's about the same. And at that, she goes to the bathroom at one point, and then the power goes out at the computer stations. And at that point, Shaw busts in with his ex-Monarch crew, and Duvall is part of that as well. And then Barnes comes back from the bathroom, spots Shaw, and then goes to call Verdugo and like tries to run out of there. Duvall almost spots her, but like she gets away. So it definitely, I appreciated the way that like Shaw went into this. He's like, hey, look, we're not here to be like enemies or whatever. I'm just gonna like, if you want. He was about to like start a deal. I don't feel like we really got to hear the full sense of the deal or whatever that he was going to make with these people, but assumingly it's like, hey, we're going to take this back, and if you want to work with us, great. If you're not going to work with us, all right, leave. But I'm very interested in his motivation currently, and what
Yeah.
what he's doing. And we'll get to more of that, I think, towards the end of the episode as well.
Yeah, so I find it really interesting because obviously the parallel with this is Godzilla King of the Monsters, where Alan Jonah's group take over the outpost that Mothra is at right at the start of the film. And
Yeah.
it's really interesting seeing how there's parallels there in terms of the characters taking over these Monarch facilities, but the approach, like you say, is very different. Because in that situation, Jonah goes in and obviously he kills everyone. You know,
Yeah.
you have that scientist played by the comedian who's like, please don't shoot me, and then he just does it anyway. Whereas in this, at least Shaw isn't going in guns blazing, so that does suggest that there's still a chance at redemption for his character, and perhaps there is a purer motivation behind what he's doing than necessarily a character like Jonah in the universe, who's doing it for more villainous motivations.
Yeah. I am very interested in his storyline. I think maybe more than most of the characters, just because like we've seen these so many different errors between him and seen him at his best.
I think this is payback. My theory, right, is this is payback for Bill getting in the way of him getting Makeko.
Oh, interesting. Okay, you got the theories, man. I'm gonna let you have that one. But we cut back to the airport. We're spending a lot of time at this airport. And Tim's like, all right, I'll help you find your dad. And he didn't even know like Hiroshi had 2 kids. So he like admired Hiroshi, but like and his work, but didn't even really know much about him. And of course we get the pencil shavings. Shout out to the pencil shavings. Can't go an episode without pencil shavings.
I'm gonna go to Comic-Con cosplaying as pencil shavings.
You definitely got to. And it's at this point where Tim's like, you guys didn't know, but like her real name isn't May. She's using fake passports and all this stuff. And then we get that cut to 30 months earlier where we see that her name is actually Cora. And Agent T over here is getting excited. But 30 months earlier, Cora / May, and when I was doing my notes, I'm like, which one should I write? Like I don't want to confuse myself. Like, so I just wrote Cora / May every time. And she's working with this previous person that we saw in that dinner sequence.
Yes,
Brenda. But
Brenda.
she doesn't. Brenda. Okay. I just, in my notes, I just wrote boss because I didn't know what to call her. So I just wrote boss. And May / Cora doesn't really like what she's doing. She doesn't feel like valued in her position. She wants to work on more important things, but they won't let her. She's not going to let her do that. And this person's the boss, Brenda, is like, kind of giving it back to her, like, everything that you do here is our property, and like, you can't do this. It's not within your pay grade or whatever, and so she's really giving it back to her that like you can't be doing this just yet, but like focus on what you're doing at the moment. I guess maybe you'll get there.
Yeah, I'm just doing a Google very quickly because I've just had something flash into my brain. Oh no. That's really awkward. I just had an Instagram message pop up at the same time as I clicked my search bar, so that person's just got ignored.
Oh, you just left them on red. Good job, dude. They're gonna see that and be like, he doesn't want to respond to me.
No, so it's applied experimental technologies. I'm just curious because I know that you had said I'll have to go back and watch it because I'm curious as to whether this is the same company that was making the bunker. Because I know you made a point of saying that they actually said the company name in that episode. So
oh no,
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
It was something else completely. Something with an S. I have it in my notes somewhere. I'll try to look for it, but I don't think it was that same name.
Cool. Okay, so
but yeah.
This whole section, as she was walking through, I was kind of looking at the like walls, the documents on the different cubicles and everything, trying to work stuff out because we'll talk about it more at the end. But to share the big reveal, because I think it's quite crucial at this point, AET or Advanced applied experimental technologies is the precursor for Apex within the Godzilla universe. Now, you don't find this out until the end of the episode, but I had written down in my notes Apex with a question mark when she started talking about the cybernetic neural interface unit, because that instantly I was like, what is the technology that Apex uses with King Ghidorah in Godzilla vs. Kong to make Mechagodzilla? It's all linked to the like neurons of the skull. So right off the bat there, I was like, this is definitely connecting to Godzilla vs. Kong and Apex, which something I theorized on the pod before.
Well, I don't know if you mentioned it in the recording, did you? But like you had told me that you heard Brenda say something about like, oh, this.
Yes, I'm about to come on to that.
Okay, all
so
right.
she says in this whole sequence, she's talking about the rebrand taking a lot of time, and she says she's holding Walter's hand 24/7, and that's like don't pay much attention and you miss it details, so I didn't catch it on my first watch.
Didn't even realize.
But the first name of Walter is the same name as Walter Simmons, who is the CEO of Apex in Godzilla vs. Kong and the person who dies when Mechagodzilla breaks out. So that is connecting Brenda to Walter as another leader in Apex. I found this whole thing really, really interesting, because I've been saying to you, the fascinating thing to me is, where are these other entities that we've seen throughout the Monsterverse operating at this time? And this episode does a fantastic job of showing us where Apex was at this time, and it also sets a tone for Monarch being complicit in what happens in the future of the organization, which we'll talk about later. So I really, really enjoyed this inclusion.
Yeah, and again, it's just another one of those little details that you don't even really need to even notice. Like I didn't catch the Walter, comment like you had said. So I didn't connect any dots. I know later on we do get the name Simmons. Like I think she's on the phone with Simmons. And hangs it up. And
and you were like, Simmons. Oh, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. crossover.
No, I was like, I figured if there's going to be a name mentioned here, like Simmons, I feel like it's got to be some sort of connection. I didn't get to look into it before recording this, but you did, obviously, and I appreciate that, so thank you. But the connections here are so cool. Like I just love that. Like it's revealing things that me as a very decently sized fan of this franchise, like, I just don't know all the ins and outs, and I think that stuff is really cool, and it's layered in there, and if you want to find it, it's there. So I thought that was pretty cool. But
I do think, like in terms of storytelling, I just want to say, because this episode particularly made me feel this way, this is an absolutely fantastic piece of writing in terms of layering in lots of different elements of the wider world building, because I think when you tell a retrospective story, there's always a chance that you're gonna undo certain details. I mean, we could point to some elements of Camp Cretaceous that aren't popular with people for that reason, but I feel like this show does such a fantastic job of staying in its lane with where it is in the Monsterverse, while also connecting the dots as to how different films get from one to the other.
But yeah, this is how you treat it. You treat it with like respect within the universe, and say like, we're going to tell the story throughout all these mediums and not just one, not just film. So that's where this franchise really pays off, I think, is by giving it the respect it deserves throughout the different mediums. But yeah, that's this show's really layering in stuff, and the way that it's flashing between timelines and giving us the information we need, and kind of revealing it in such a cool way, where like, subtle details are just given to us throughout the episode, and then there's always like a big reveal towards the end or something. I think that's really cool. So after this sequence, we do cut back to the current timeline, and Barnes was finally able to get a hold of Verdugo, fills her in on what's going on with Shaw, and Shaw's there, and he wants to take like all of the weapons. It looks like there was like weapons, maybe some bombs and stuff, equipment, whatever it was at that outpost. He's like, take it all, let's go, we got to get out of here or whatever. So very quick scene, but then we do cut to Tacoma, Washington. Tim, Kate, Kentaro pull up to May's house, and And yeah, I know you're laughing already because there was a really funny sequence. Tim's trying to get like super serious about like following his lead, and then he goes and trips on the sidewalk. That stuff's too funny. Like I love when somebody like is try to take me seriously for a second and then does something that you can't take them seriously. That's but they end up going inside talking to her mom and sister. And I'm like, this is a bold move to like go in there, not really have any details on who this person really is, and just like kind of make stuff up as they go along. So they make up that they knew her from a manga online group, and like and Tim's really, he knows this stuff, I guess. It sounded.
I
like
love how they're like.
Yeah, he could have just been saying anything, but like it worked on me at least. Like I was like, yo, he knows what he's talking about. So I don't know. Those could have just been any random names, but we learned that May hasn't been home in 2 years, and after that, you can tell like the sister's a little hesitant, and the mom's like just kind of like I just holding on for any kind of information that you may have about Cora, I guess. But her name, I don't know if her name ever comes up. I forget. But they end up following the sister into the city, and the sister, and I guess, knows that they were tracking them, finds them, and the sister mentions the applied experimental technologies. So but she, at first, I'm so glad that we got a company name, because at first she's like, "Are you with the company? The company is after her?" I'm like, please don't take this route of doing the, just naming it the company, because there's been so many shows, I feel like, where they don't name whatever the entity is, and they just they'll name it like the entity or the company or the whatever, and it's just I never liked that.
I couldn't believe it. They
I
called
never
it
liked
the company, and then they said, "Oh, Hammond's got to leave her alone," and I was like, "What?"
But I'm glad that they came out with applied experimental technologies, as generic as it is. Like I was grateful that there was at least a company name. But yeah, so not. I don't know if we learned too much other than that. So, but we do go back to the past. And the coworkers are messaging Cora at this time, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on? Did you upload something? Like, the boss is on a rampage. The boss is on a rampage." Oh, it probably said her name right there, Brenda.
It did.
That's where I was just like, I don't feel like
just
writing
like,
this down.
I know this was you.
Yeah. So and they're like, "Where are you?" And so she basically just starts packing her things, and she's like, "All right, what's going through your mind at this point? What do you think she did before we get some more reveals?"
I was like, okay, she's well they say something about the system going down. So I was like, oh well, clearly she's like destroyed the system for some reason because she's discovered something.
Yeah, I'm just assuming she put a bug in the system and took it down, did something like that. So but the fact that she's so afraid of this company, is very interesting. It really tells a story and paints a picture for like who they are, and they're not to be trusted. So, we do cut back to current day, and at this point, I was like, oh wait, what's happening? Like, so May's now with Brenda, the old boss, and I'm like, wait, what is happening? Like, what timeline are we on? I was like very confused. And the person's like, why did you stop? Like, why did you do this? What gave you the right to do this? And there was just a little argument between them. But we do cut back to the past again. It was a lot of quick sequences, and we get to see that Cora is trying to enter into the cybernetic neuro interface unit, into their mainframe, and she's like trying to guess the passwords, I guess, and try to get in there. And then she does get into a bunker-like facility, and it was there was a lot of stuff going down in this sequence. It was a very quick sequence. Like we get to see her walking down, and there's computers, there's some equipment and stuff like that, and then she gets on the monitor and sees that there's like animal testing going on. There's monkeys in
Mm-hmm.
there with some sort of neural scanning equipment of some sort, and the monkey's freaking out. It's smashing on the cage. So at this point, how confirmed was it in your mind that you were on the right path with your theories?
I was pretty confident that it was Apex at this point, but the thing that shocked me was the fact that this confirms a really shady detail, which is that Apex were working with Monarch. Because like I showed you before, I actually rewound the bit of the episode where she was going into the basement, because I was like, is that a Monarch logo on that screen? Am I just seeing things? And I paused it, and as she goes into the basement, the monitor that's got the display of the scientific experiments on has got a Monarch logo on it. So clearly either applied experimental technologies at this point were working with Monarch, or they had stolen Monarch technology and got access to it. But it makes sense for them to be working with Monarch, because if you think about the context of what we see next, it's them trying to control a primate. And up until this point, the main Muto that they've dealt with is Kong. So it makes sense that they're trying to experiment in ways to control him on Skull Island, following obviously the missions that we've seen there, because we know that from that mission, Brooks came back from that, same with the other main characters as well. So it kind of sets an interesting parallel there, where yes, you get the connection for the future, because you can see that Monarch and Apex are more connected than you realize in the films. But also, I think there's really a connection here back to Kong as well, with perhaps them choosing to experiment with ways to control primates as a direct result of the encounter that you see in that film.
Yeah. I know, obviously there's the parallels with Godzilla versus Kong and all the stuff that they were doing there. But in my mind, the first thing that popped up was that glove that we see in the trailer for the new Kong, because there was like equipment on this monkey in this video, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna put some equipment on Kong to kind of control Kong. So I was wondering, like, is that glove that we see? I don't know if there's any history to a glove like that in this universe or anything, but I was like, is this going to be some sort of way to control these beasts, to use them as avatars, for their own destruction in a way. So I thought, that could be cool. Outside of building your own massive monster, maybe you could control them as well. Like, so yeah, who knows? But I was freaked out. I just, it was a sad scene to see all this animal testing and stuff. But, the bad guys got to keep batting. They got to keep doing bad stuff. So, but we do flag.
It's really interesting, because obviously you allude to it a bit as well, but there's the clear connection here with Ghidorah, and how we see Serizawa take control of Mechagodzilla in Godzilla vs. Kong, because that is using an evolution of this technology, which is feeding into that sort of cybernetic neural interface, and that's exactly what is inside the Ghidorah skull. So it's really cool seeing kind of the origins of this technology, and realizing that actually Monarch are implicitly connected to the destruction of Hong Kong, which is something that you would never think in the film. You just think that Monarch and Apex are two separate entities, but actually this shows you that there's something much shadier going on, and there is so much crossover and sort of grey area between these companies and organizations as well.
Why do they always got to do this? Like, there's always these massive companies that we want to look up to, and like, say like, and I guess it's based on reality in some ways, but like, but going back to like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's like, oh, we all love S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. is awesome. They've got these hover carriers and, great teams of people, but then we learn they're all Nazis, like basically. Yeah. So, it's terrible. But, so I find that happening a lot, and I just want a good like company we can rely on.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll ever happen, but
that's apex cybernetics, Brad.
Okay, good, great. But where are we? So we cut to the current timeline again, and Brenda's like, what you saw down there was the future being created. I thought that was a cool line. It was not much of a room, but she's like, whatever you saw down there was the future being created. We learned that May wiped out years of research and tons of money, by doing that. And then at that same time, Tim and the crew, they find the AET building. And I love that Tim's like, hold on, I got an idea. And he calls in like a Godzilla alert. Like a Titan alert. So that was pretty funny. But everybody goes running. He figures that'll help, get them in the building and all that. So
I love here the scene you get with Verdugo on the plane where she like looks down and sees the alert and literally just goes, Tim.
Yeah, I love Tim. He's so funny. He's a great character. He's a really good, addition, I guess, to this universe. I love it when there's like a silly guy that's just doing his thing in these movies. But Brenda wonders like, why May was like kind of at these emergencies over the past little while. She also knows that test that was happening was a fake test. She's got it, she's like, we would have gotten some warning that if it was real. At the same time, like there's a whole lot of blackmailing going on because now she wants to blackmail May to like get information on all the Titans and report back to her. So while there may be some connection with Monarch, I don't know. Like I'm questioning it based off of that, because why would she only rely on May / Cora to get her the information if they're working in tangent with Monarch? But who knows? I don't know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, so I had some thoughts on this. I think that the fact that she says they would have had advance warning means that they are working with Monarch to some extent, because clearly they would have let them know. But it would be like anything with a security contractor working on a government contract, right? You only get access to whatever information you need for that contract. So it might be that Monarch is saying, hey, can you develop this for us? And they know that there's all this stuff going on with the Titans that they're not getting any information about. So they actually want to get that information to be able to do more with it. And I think this ties into, you're going to love this, Brad. I'm a details orientated boy, right?
Yeah, you are.
So the posters in the foyer of the AET building say, if innovation is the reward for persistent experimentation. So I think that kind of encapsulates this, which is this is an organization that wants to know everything. They want to be able to experiment with everything, even if they shouldn't. And that's why they're trying to get this information. But also equally, we know that May or Cora had backups of the Monarch files, so it is possible that she potentially sent some of them to them to try and, get them off of her back, so to speak. So that could have easily happened here as well.
Yeah, well, she gave the backups to Duvall, right? Who then did with that? Like, did she keep them or did she pass them along to AET? Like I don't really know, but yeah, there's a lot of potential, and I am very confused at the allegiances of everybody basically at this point. They're basically throwing everything at the wall and just saying like, hey, you can't really trust anybody here. Like nobody is very good at this moment. But
apart from Tim.
Apart from Tim, which I saw in that first episode, I'm like, Tim seems like a good guy.
You did.
He's a good guy. That's the only thing I've gotten right here. I knew that Tim was a good guy. But we do get a nice flashback to like that sequence we saw in one of the previous episodes of Kintara and May meeting for the first time. Taking that picture and her popping in the picture. And then we go back to the current timeline again. And May once again reveals that she was using them. I feel like this is the second time that we've kind of gotten this reveal. But she also wants them to leave and like get out of here. Verdugo comes and picks up Tim and the kids. They kind of like kidnap them off the streets. Kate makes a deal with Verdugo in the car and says like, we'll help you.
Help us get Mail back and we'll get
Yeah. So they make a deal for May's release. And then at that point, like the boss, May's boss, hears like Verdugo's on the phone for you. Brenda. I'm not gonna call her Brenda. Her name's the boss. But she gets a phone call or something.
There's something in this moment as well where she does seem to recognize Verdugo's name. So
yeah.
I think they've clearly had a conversation before as well, which again ties into that whole Monarch is connected more here to some extent.
Yeah. What? I don't know if this show is good or bad because it's like it's giving me more questions.
Do I tell you
maybe?
what?
I don't know.
This perfectly. Do you know what this show? The massive triumph of this show is it has managed to sustain over 7 episodes the feeling of suspense you get in Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Oh, sure. There's a lot of intrigue here. A lot of thriller aspects, and I could see that. I could definitely see that. And that's essentially what I was saying before. It's like with Hydra and everything, you don't know who's on the good side or the bad side. It's interesting.
Well, Brad, it's interesting you make that parallel because in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the message that activates Hydra is out of the shadows. And what is it that Tim says to Verdugo in the next scene? That transition.
Yeah, he basically says, "Hey, we got to take Monarch out of the shadows." And I thought that was a great scene. Like Tim, Tim's in the car with her, and he's like, "Hey, you happy with this agreement you just made?" So obviously they just made an agreement with AET, right? And they're talking about the PR of it all and the fake Titan alert and stuff like that. How are we going to handle this? And Tim's like, "Yeah, you need to handle this. You got to handle the PR and bring them out of the shadows." And I thought that was a cool sequence. And
I think
again,
really
I'm questioning though, like.
I'm
like, who's in what shadow? Like, why? I don't even know what the shadows are at this point. I'm like, who's there? I don't know. I thought everybody was out. I didn't know.
I think it's really interesting how you've seen Verdugo become more receptive to Tim's feedback over the course of the episodes. Because there was a little moment here where he like goes to say something, but he's not sure if she wants to hear it, and she like makes a noise that's like go on, so like showing him that she wants to hear it. And I just find that interesting because she's gone from shutting him down and threatening to suspend him to actually really valuing him as this sort of collaborator. And I think it's interesting because it almost sets them up as a pair who are going to end up in charge of Monarch, and that is something that we see going into the scene where she does her then press release where she gives this big talk to the public, because on the news screen it presents her as Monarch CEO. So even though we know she's deputy director, now in the image of the public she is the person who is in charge of this organization, which I thought was quite interesting as well, because it's clearly almost a way for her to posture for more influence, so she's then actually able to do something about these titans as well. But equally in that sequence, what I kind of alluded to earlier when we were talking about this is her talking about being a mother, and you can see again that kind of emotional impact. So I wouldn't be surprised if in one of the 3 episodes we've got left, maybe we get a flashback where we find out that she lost a child on G-Day or something similar. I just have a feeling there's going to be some kind of emotional weight there, because we've seen her hesitate at reference to Godzilla and reference to G-Day on more than one occasion now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of all these allegiances, and like, with Monarch being in the shadows, and also not doing anything with the information that they have. We've previously learned that. Why would somebody not do all they can, in that position? So I don't know. I have no idea what the plan is, but I'm not trusting Monarch. I'm not trusting anybody at this moment. She's on TV. She's giving her nice like presidential speech, basically.
Dude, this gave me such an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. vibe as well. Because do you remember in season 4 where Mace does this whole Shield is relaunched with this good organization now, and then like 2 episodes later it all goes down the pan again. I just have the feeling that there is chaos on the horizon.
You know, I was thinking about it the other day. It has, nothing to do with this, but I was just like, wouldn't it be great if Shield came back?
Yeah, dude.
I feel like we need that now. I feel like we need that.
Yeah.
I do feel like I was thinking about like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like kind of needing like a good kick here. And I was like, what would be better than just let's bring back Shield? Let's do it. Like not the show. I don't need the show. Like we can bring back the show, sure, but I just mean the entity of Shield, like the company. Let's bring it back. But at this moment, we get Brenda. She's on the phone with Mr. Simmons, and it's just like such a evil little reveal, like the twist of the camera.
Dude, I love
and
this.
we get to see Apex Cybernetics logo on the screen.
Yeah.
So that like merger or whatever you had talked about before, it's come true, and we get to see the transition is fully happening now, and Apex is a real deal. So yeah, that I was like, oh. Tom's right about everything.
Dude, I was literally like, I screamed at my telly. I knew it. Like I was so excited. I think this is really interesting because she says on the phone to him, if she sticks to our agreement, it could be very fruitful. So this is obviously hinting at them getting more access to Monarch. It might explain how they end up developing the heaves that we see in Godzilla versus Kong, which are the vehicles that can go into the Hollow Earth. Because obviously, how are Apex going to know about the Hollow Earth? They're now working with Monarch. So I still feel like everything is pointing towards the Hollow Earth being a part of this story, especially as we come to talk about the end in a second.
Well, it connects all those dots. You've been questioning this time about like how do they make that jump into Godzilla King of the Monsters, like being like this Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. type company where like they've got the flying ships and crazy, stuff. So this makes a lot of sense. Yeah. This agreement.
We could find out that Apex has developed all of that technology, like you're suggesting, which then is really fascinating because obviously you can question a lot of the efficacy around that, question whether they've been doing other things with Monarch technology behind the scenes, because obviously we know that they developed Mechagodzilla, we see that in GVK, but it then opens this really interesting question, doesn't it, of actually what else have they been doing with the access that Monarch has given them that potentially isn't above board. And I think that is potentially, depending on where this series ends, setting us up with some really, really interesting territory to explore in a subsequent series.
Yeah, and honestly, like seeing how any of this maybe connects, like is there a timely reveal of all this? Is there a reason we're getting this show right now before the next film? Like, I'll be interested to find out. So, my eyes are going to be on the lookout, dude, in the next movie. Like, it's going to be crazy. I'm going to be like Tom. I'm going to be.
You're actually going to see Agent T running around in the background somewhere.
There he is. You didn't tell me.
Get stomped on by Godzilla.
Please. Yes. But at this point, we get cut to the Alaskan Rift.
Yes.
We're out there again, and Shaw is in a helicopter.
It's the first time. I was just going to point out, this episode is the first time we hear it referred to as a rift as well, which is quite interesting.
True, yeah. We got like a little glimpse of the light, pouring out of the sky and stuff previously. So, but now we're flying over top of it in this helicopter, and they begin to set off charges all around it. And at this point, like Shaw is, to me, feeling like very much like just like a villain, like a true villain.
Yes.
And it's, there's a tornado being created by the charges and the rift and everything. It's like spinning wildly out of control. They're almost not making it out of there in time. And then like the rift closes and he's like, just like going crazy.
He literally like screams. Yeah.
So,
right. Okay.
So I'm like, are we dealing now with Shaw the villain, like the pure villain? Like, I don't know.
No.
What are we dealing with here? Because to me, like he mentioned, obviously, I think in the last episode that like he wants to help Godzilla, not harm Godzilla. So is this a way to help Godzilla, to close off the portal to not make other creatures come through that could potentially kill him? Like, what's the deal? What are you thinking?
Yes, no, I think you're spot on with exactly what I think is going to happen, which is I think the next 3 episodes are going to explain how Shaw is as fit and healthy as he is at the age he is, and that is because the accident involved him going to the Hollow Earth. And
I'm gonna edit out every time you mention going into the Hollow Earth, going into the Hollow Earth, going into the Hollow Earth, the Hollow Earth. I'm sorry, this is your accent now.
But it makes sense, right? Hear me out, because he's seen what's on the other side of that rift, so he knows some of the creatures that we haven't encountered yet, but are going to appear, and he wants to stop them from being able to get into the Earth. So that's why he's sealing the rift. So I think he's helping Godzilla because he thinks if he seals all of the rifts, they can coexist with Godzilla, but they potentially can't coexist with whatever else could come through. And so that's why he's doing it. So I think his motivations are actually pure, but the way he's doing it is anything but pure. Now, obviously, it's interesting to think about the fact that we know that these portals still exist by the time of GVK, and presumably some of the other Titans that we see in King of the Monsters, like I can't remember its name off of the top of my head, but the massive, like, woolly mammoth, essentially, presumably they've come from other rifts, although they are contained at facilities, right? So there's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle, in the sense that we know that Monarch have several facilities around the globe, and several of those facilities already have Titans contained in them. So they're Titans that have already come through from the Hollow Earth, if that's where all of the Titans come from. So it could be that actually this series is going to show us them sealing the Hollow Earth as best as they can. Then the Titans in King of the Monsters are the Titans that are already contained, because we know there was already a facility holding Rodan, we know there was already a facility holding Mothra, we know there was already the facility holding Ghidorah. So theoretically, you don't need a rift to get any of those monsters to appear in that film anyway. And then GVK is then when they go back through the rift, because that's finally when they take the trip to the Hollow Earth. So I could see it conceivably being that this show is essentially explaining to us why the Hollow Earth and all of the creatures that exist in it haven't been a problem in the Monsterverse up until this point, because this is how they prevent it being a problem. So in that way, Shaw is sort of trying to save people, but he's doing it in a really backwards way because he doesn't feel like Monarch are responding quickly enough to it. And what I think you will see is, my big prediction is, our finale is going to be these spikes that they're detecting is going to be another Titan emerging from the Hollow Earth. And that will be him then saying, look, I was right all along. You should have acted quicker to resolve this. So I think it's all heading towards a really interesting ending point. I'm just curious as to how they resolve it, and whether we get, okay, that's it, we're done, or if they leave it open for more, because I think they're kind of answering a lot of questions in terms of where, say, Apex has come from, what the history of Monarch is, but there's definitely still scope to explore a lot more than I think they'll be able to do in 3 episodes.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of their budget are they saving for, like, some sort of maybe big battle sequence or something like that. Like, there was not much in this one, obviously. Like, it was mostly just about the people. There was one little shot of that one Titan kind of like jumping at a helicopter, I believe.
Yes,
which is great shot, by the way. But yeah, maybe they are saving it for like a reemergence of something else. The whole time while you were talking about maybe Shaw going down there, I'm thinking, about what I said before, how maybe it connects to the next movie. I'm like, dude, what if he sees that Scar King Titan? The one
that I would love, like, that. Yeah.
Dude, how sick would that be? He's like, dude, we got another gorilla down there, man, and a monkey, whatever, and we cannot mess with that one. Like, it's gonna be like, there's a whole crew of them down there. We got to close this off. So it could be interesting to see if it does connect in that way to the next movie. That would be cool.
Yeah. Can you imagine if we find out after this series finishes that Shaw's going to be in the next movie? I'd be like, what?
That would be a great little reveal. I don't know.
Like, at that point, he's 105 years old.
Yeah, because it's I don't know when the next one's gonna be set, but I feel
Oh,
like it's
dude,
gotta
imagine
be.
he shows up. He shows up like the scientific advisor in Doctor Who. At this point, he's got a Zimmer frame, but the Zimmer frame has like a flick down missile that he can fire up.
Soon he's gonna be like that the face of Bohm or whatever in Doctor Who. It's just gonna be a face, right? Just like
Yeah.
isn't that what it was called? Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, but yeah, that was a great episode. It was a little confusing in some of the aspects for me, but I was
Yes.
like, it revealed so much that I still had a great time with it, and yeah, I really love the layers that the show is giving us,
I
and
do.
there's so many questions. I have so many questions, so I'm like, is this making it messier for me or not? Like, I don't know. I just really hope that they don't leave us like kind of guessing with so many of these things,
Yeah, me too.
and give us some clear answers. How many episodes we got left? 8, 9, 10?
3.
3. So we still
Yeah.
got a lot of time left to tell some really great stories. So looking forward to it.
So I am gonna just touch on very quickly the detail that I sent you that absolutely blew my mind, which is after seeing Apex come back, I wanted to go back and watch a clip from Godzilla vs Kong. So I watched the clip of when Godzilla attacks the Apex facility, and the device that they use to lure Godzilla in is a circular ball device that is giving off a frequent vibration and sound exactly similar to what we see in the lake in the prior episode and what we see Hiroshi working with at the end of the episode to wake up Godzilla. So it's interesting because this is a precursor, I think, to the technology that Apex used to cause the chaos we see in Godzilla vs. Kong. And when you think about it, the deal that Verdugo's made potentially means that they get access to that technology once Hiroshi's back and is working with Monarch again. So it's really interesting to think about how this show is showing us how whatever these characters are doing now, even if they're able to resolve the situation as it's unfolding in this show and stop another emergence event, ultimately their actions in this show do cause the chaos that we see in Godzilla versus Kong. So I think
Yeah.
that's a really cool connection because it shows that, even if you are able to prevent something from happening in this instance, actually the decisions you make to enable that may have repercussions further down the line. And I think that's so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this show is telling us about Monarch in general. That all you have to do is miss one meeting and
Yeah.
the future of Monarch is completely different. That's all it
Yeah.
took for them. And yeah, I fully believe you're right there that, any little choice that they make, like, yes, they can wrap up this story, whatever they're telling, with their dad and stuff like that. Like, that stuff can all be revealed. They, don't necessarily need to be a part of further storytelling, I think, but the overall story, a story of connecting these companies together, these,
Yeah.
massive corporations to maybe do worse or better, who knows? But yeah, I love it.
And
I think
hey, I'm going to blow your mind here, right? Let's say that they decide to treat this as an anthology type series. So we get this series and it's done, right? And we know that these characters reunited with Hiroshi and that's it. There's nothing stopping the next series, if they were to do a season 2, following Zerazara in the build up to the King of the Monsters, or following Russell in the build up to it, or even giving us more backstory on the facility that's at Kong Skull Island or anything like that. There's a lot of scope for them to kind of explore some of the characters they've already introduced as well, which I think is quite exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's enough, confusion as to who did what and what the timelines are and all this stuff that they could further explore plenty of other stories.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I dig it. And what is, do we know anything about the next episode? Do you have those titles and
so
synopsis?
episode 8 is Birthright, and it says the team goes back to where things all began to confront Shaw. On the brink of collapse, Monarch takes drastic measures.
Ooh, okay.
I hope you appreciated the extra oration there to make that really hit.
Yeah, it hit me like in my soul. Great work. So yeah, we'll see y'all next time, I think, because it's winding down, but we still got plenty of time left. But I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to happen next. No idea. I'm excited, man. Anywhere people can find you online if they want to talk some more Monarch with you?
Hang out at Tom_Jurassic on Twitter and Instagram.
When are you opening up the Tom_Monarch or Agent_T? When are those happening?
If Jurassic Park dies, which, considering Jurassic
Didn't you
Park
hear?
Survival is on the horizon, isn't likely.
I thought I heard that Jurassic Park was done. I thought that's what I heard, isn't it?
I mean, I couldn't possibly comment on the attitudes towards the brands, Brad.
Well, that's Tom. Thank you, Tom, for being a lovely co-host and bringing all of the information that I couldn't possibly bring. I'm just here to tell what happened in the episode and let you comment on it. But you can find me on Threads, the podcast on Threads, and I'm on Letterboxd. I like doing a lot of stuff on Letterboxd, so go find me over there. Just search for my name, Brad Jost. But thank you so much for watching. You can listen to the podcast on any of your favorite podcasting platforms out there. Which one is it? It's this one. Boom. There you go. On Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Music, good places like that. The podcast, like I said, on Threads, on Instagram, on TikTok, and Facebook. You can find us there. That's it, though. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody.
See you then.